welcome everybody here on behalf of the iMoot team, and thanks. This is the very first session of iMoot 2016, and so very excited. Today we're looking at changing behaviour through learner experience design from Miriam and Miranda, and these guys very much know their stuff. Been involved in Moodle for a long time. So Miriam and Miranda, I'd like to hand it over to you, and very much looking forward to the session. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to start this session, even though we planned Miriam to start it, but her audio seems to have dropped out at the moment. So, hi, we're Miriam Laidlaw and Miriam Laidlaw. We both work at the moment at Waitemata District Health Board, which is the biggest district health board in New Zealand. We cover two quite large areas, two big hospitals in Auckland, in Waitakere and on the North Shore in Auckland. And we have a lot of kind of side organizations as well, which brings our audience as learning designers to about 10,000 people. We run Totara. Well, actually, we don't run it ourselves. We are in a big consortium of DHBs with a shared Totara that gets run by another big DHB called Counties Manukau. But we're both very familiar with Moodle from working at Unitec and other places. And so even though it's Totara, we still look at it as Moodle. So what we're going to talk about today is, I'm trying to change slides. Okay, it's how we use Totara every day, and the core Moodle activities, basically, I'll just call it Moodle from now, the core activities to enhance the user experience. Because basically, no matter how interesting you make your content and how brilliant your multimedia is, if the user loses their way on their way to the resources, or doesn't know how to get out, or clicks himself out, that brilliant content is not going to be much use. So we have been really working hard to change the learner experience so that our content, which is focused on changing behavior, can actually be reached easily and we have more traction. So that's why we say on this slide, well, we decrease the resistance to e-learning by making the learner experience better. Because we had a lot of people dropping out of things. There was a lot of user error because a lot of our people are focused on, getting people better and not being computer specialists. So they need to be handheld a lot. We changed the design of the compliance training, which was the biggest pain point, to be very useful and enjoyable. We also use Moodle activities to digitalize paper-based stuff, not only assessments as we've got on the screen here, but more things, and just constantly work on ironing out these steps to make them as smooth as possible so people can kind of sail through to their certificates, which is in the end what we're after. Miriam.
I'm back. Can you put on the next slide for me, because you're the presenter? Thank you. So
okay. Hi, so yeah, taking over again because Miriam's dropped out. It's lucky we're in the same room so we can see each other. So the way we started was actually changing our content. And so the e-learning that was here when the new team, us, kind of came in, was very old school. Definitely it's still available in a lot of places. But going from information, checking facts, yay, you've got your certificate. So we changed that to making it very interactive and working with scenarios and having people go through scenes and have the information on the side so they learned while doing and needed to constantly interact, because what we could also see was that the previous format, even though people were getting like an hour's worth of training on their portfolio, which happens with nurses, the reporting in Moodle told us they were actually spending 4 minutes. So, because it was so easy, click yourself through, next, and then you answer the quiz, which some typical ones where you think like, I don't even have to read this to answer these things. So that's how we changed it. What we used as an approach, so this is an example of how our modules in the end start looking, and they get more and more complicated, actually making it hard for ourselves sometimes to develop what we design, because it's so complicated. So the method we use is action mapping. So I'm sure that a whole number of you will be familiar with that. So the action mapping model was invented, let's say, or formulated by Kathy Moore. And the way you design is basically to start from a measurable goal. So something that after the course will have some kind of a business impact, something you can actually measure. And from that measurable goal, you start mapping out which changes in behavior or changes in skills will actually achieve that goal. And if really established that, you can start designing the practice activity, online practice activities that will allow you to achieve that change in behavior. And so the very last thing that you think about is the information that is actually needed to do those practice activities. So if you look at this in a practical way, so what does this mean for a course? It will mean that you have let's say, a scenario where people have to make decisions, and they have the option to go and look at a resource that will give them the theory and the background to actually be able to answer those questions and to make those decisions, so that they learn while doing and not the other way around, like I first read the theory and then you give me a question to answer. And I would hand over to Miriam. Okay, I'll mute myself. Okay, I'm going to take on. Oh,
I'm unmuted. Okay, I'm good. Okay, so the next screen. So this is an example of what it then looks like. Yeah, I think the next step is to sit right next to one another and just talk through the same microphone. This is an example of what it actually looks like when we put that action mapping into practice. So what you're seeing here is not Moodle, unfortunately. We use a piece of software called Articulate Storyline to create SCORM packages, but we do then put those into Moodle and have the results and everything like that feed into the gradebook. But we use this piece of software because it lets us get quite creative and things like that. And it's really, really great that we can then create these awesome interactive scenarios and modules that can be hosted in Moodle and can pass grades to Moodle, and our learners can access them along with other activities. So what you see on the screen here is our privacy and confidentiality module, our infection prevention control, our fire, our infection prevention control again, and our health and safety module. Next screen. My screen hasn't updated yet. Oh, there we go. And so this is just more examples of things we've done, and we sometimes try and incorporate different styles so that people don't feel like they're doing the same thing over and over again and it looks the same as every other module. So here, I'll explain some of the things that I've done here, and I'll then pass back over to Miranda to just have a 1 minute chat about some things. But you know, we get to have a play with pressing different bits of the screen that can be interacted with, making little games and things like that. And yeah, I mean, I suppose we don't want to go on too much about this because it's not really Moodle as such. So, but one of the things that we do then feed back to comes back to Moodle, and this is Miranda's thing that she did, but I did help her with it. I'm going to take some credit, and and I'll let her explain how we use progress tracking and conditional access to create badges in Moodle.
Unmute.
There might be a bit of a delay, but I have muted myself.
Okay, so what you see on this screen is what someone sees in Moodle when they have finalized the 5 modules of infection control. So we presented on this in the November iMoot. So obviously there are badges that can be used, but they're like course-based. So the way we wanted it to fit was we wanted it to fit with a storyline look. And so if people come into the course for the first time, they will only see the module buttons. And so each time that they finish the module based on their grade and their completion with a conditional activity, we swap out the image. So the normal module button gets hidden and we have a button with a badge next to it that is shown. And so people can really follow where they are in this quite large course. So the reason we do this as well is because a lot of our audience are nurses. They're very short on time. So we are to cut our e-learning experiences into 15 to 20-minute bursts so that when they get called away by a patient or they only have really little time slots, they can come back to this and easily know where they've left off, and also easily finish a piece and not have to restart or start in the middle. And so we try to make that as visual as possible. So conditional activities, brilliant. We use them a lot. Taking over again, Miriam.
Okay, so at first, so this is coming back again to changing our user experience, is first we had a system like this where people started on the course page, they went off to the SCORM package, they came back to the course page, they went off to a quiz, they came back to the course page, they got their certificate. And firstly, this was a challenge for several reasons. The SCORM package told people that they can now close the window when they were done. Unfortunately, closing the window meant closing the browser, as our SCORM packages didn't launch in a new window because of browser pop-up blocker issues. And then people were confused about how to continue the course because the course was gone. And it also provided, even those people who managed to get to the end and not close the browser window, it still provided navigational issues for people with limited computer or technical know-how. And so some of the feedback that we got from people was also getting to the part to print the certificate. Would it not be better, instead of going back to the course, to just continue going forward? And so what we did is we changed it, next slide, so that now people, when they get to the course page, they go to the SCORM, and then we don't tend to do quizzes that much anymore, but we have implemented a feedback module. And they go straight from the SCORM to the feedback, straight from the feedback to the certificate, and then they can go wherever they like because they're done, unless they want to go do a different course. So there are different ways that we have set out our courses, but in general, they do flow on in this particular fashion. And there are still some challenges. So we've managed to get it working in this sort of way, because you can alter a particular file in the SCORM package, which I will go into more detail in a moment, that will then allow us to push it straight out to the feedback. And the feedback module also has a setting in it where once a student has submitted feedback, you can put in a link that will take them straight to the certificate. So that's really great on the feedback modules part. But if we use lessons, which we do occasionally, or quizzes, there isn't anything that we can put into the lesson or the quiz that will automatically push them, as far as we can tell, to the next thing. One of the things we find is a challenge with lessons. In one particular instance, we use a lesson as a form of assessment, so we use it in lieu of a quiz, and we can't find a way to alter that end of lesson page to include a link directly to the next activity, and the lesson won't actually mark as properly complete, therefore submitting someone's grade, unless the student reaches the end of lesson page. So that one's still a bit of a kink in our thing, but yeah, we're working on that. So next slide, please. Miranda's just getting us to the next slide. Let me know when it's happened, because I'm reconnecting. Oh, there we go. Okay, so by default, the SCORMs that we make have the message at the end that says, the content has ended, you may close this window. And as I explained, this caused a few issues. So we discovered that by changing a particular file in the SCORM package called the goodbye.html file, you could actually change the text that was on there. So we changed it to the content has ended, click exit activity in the top right of the screen, with brackets. You may need to scroll up, because some people don't realize that they can scroll up and down on the screen. This is the level of the technical level of our people. That was still not quite good enough, because it was still clunky. So we got a little bit more creative with the goodbye.html file, and it now looks something like that last, back, undo. Okay, it looks something like that last box, which has a nice big heading that says course completed, and it's got a massive button that they cannot miss right there in front of them, that says continue to feedback and certificate. I mean, it tells you. So that's what our end of SCORM page looks like now. So now you may go on. Thank you, Miranda. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to play with this in other SCORM creating software. The software that we use is Articulate Storyline 2. And inside the actual zipped SCORM, there is a folder called LMS. And within that, there is a file called goodbye.html. And so what we do is we copy that file like out onto the desktop, because you can't edit it, or I can't edit it directly within the zipped folder. And then I edit it, and then once I'm done, I copy and paste it back. Now, again, we're using Windows. I don't know how this works in Mac or Ubuntu, but in Windows, it will let you copy and paste the file straight back into the zip folder without having to unzip it, and then you just choose replace file. So that's quite good. Next slide, please. So this is what it looks like in the back end for those of you who don't mind looking at a little bit of HTML, because that's all this is some HTML and some inline styling. Is that the original one is at the top, and all it says is the content has ended, you may close this window, and it's got absolutely nothing else. And I did a little bit of tweaking, and our ones now look like what is in the bottom of that screen. So the link goes directly to the feedback answer questions page. So not even the feedback module, which if you just link directly to the feedback module, it takes you to a page where it's got a tiny little link in the middle that says answer the questions. And so we've actually taken them to the answer the questions page so that there's fewer clicks for our users, because they don't always see little links, even if they're right there in the middle of the page. So, and yes, the target top was vital, because the SCORM package shows within a frame. And so that goodbye.html file is showing within the same frame that the SCORM package is showing. So without that little target equals underscore top bit in the link, we found that the page was loading within that frame. So you actually had the course page loading within the frame of inside the course page, which was not ideal, again, especially if they then went on to try and do another course, which would then load another frame inside that frame. So target equals top breaks it out of the frame, works perfectly, and goes straight to answering the questions on the feedback activity. And a little bit of inline styling means that it looks nicer. Next screen. And I talked about the fact that, so that's getting from the SCORM to the feedback, and the feedback actually has a thing built into it where in the settings you can say link to next activity, and you can actually copy and paste the link in there. And if you squint, you can just see that the link points to our certificate activity. And what it looks like is down below. Thank you for your feedback, blah, blah, blah. You may now continue on to receive your certificate. And I use the word continue very specifically in that text because the button says continue. And I can't change the text of that button. Presumably I can by going into the language strings, but we are not, what does articulate? I don't understand your question. Well, I don't understand what, how it's Articulate's job to support us. What, the last slide? They can't. Needs to be handmade. Oh, pretty sure that's the same for any SCORM creation package. Not just Articulate. Anyway, I'm going to mute myself again and hand over to Miranda for the next screen.
Yes, I'm back. We wanted to tell you a little bit more about the feedback as it fits into the learner experience. So we put a lot of thought in actually designing the feedback questions. Because of our action mapping model in the design, we've got some clear that we want to kind of come back to us. So we tried a few options. Obviously, we're looking at a few Likert scales, which are quite typical, but there's often in feedback an open box asking people, do you have any comment on the course, or is there anything you want to tell us? And all the feedback you often get back is people either leave it blank or put in like I liked it, or good, or nothing special. So those two questions that you see there on the right side, very specific, as tell us about one thing you liked and tell us about one thing you would change or had trouble with. And so that really seemed to hit the target as a learner experience of feedback really well. We get a really clear sentence for the one thing you liked, and we get really clear things on the second one as well. We're really happy when they say nothing, but very often it will point us to a very specific learner experience that went wrong for them, or something they couldn't find, or frustration. It will often say, like, when I clicked on the little book, it did immediately, or I didn't understand the instructions to do this and that. So it gives us very specific lines, because ask them for one thing and it goes quickly, but it gives them a very specific thing that they immediately think about as, oh, this frustrated me, or I didn't agree with that answer to that question. So we get a really good short and sweet experience of people, and it's also really good for us. So here are some examples of feedbacks, and you can really see how it gives us a very short sentence, but it actually something. It also quite often gives us an exact line, like new information, internal fire number 777, clarity of order of my actions if fire alerted to me. So with maps to our measurable goals, so we can present that to any audit or requests we get from governance teams here within the hospital. And as our e-learning seems to hit the spot, people can remember exactly the goals we set out for. And it also gives us the idea of, liking the one that's on the bottom, where someone is really happy with how those badges worked. It keeps me interested, and it wasn't taking too long. It just gave me a good idea. Easier navigation. So we give some feedback really on what we do, and it's very short and to the point. Next slide. Yeah, and then obviously we don't want to withhold the bad feedback from you. We do get but we're very happy to say that it's quite limited. Most of the what did you not like is about something that, broke or they didn't work with. The funny thing is things like, I don't like computer learning, why can't we go to a classroom, this is for school children, can we have a quiz again? So we have a few people that clearly indicate that 4 minutes of clicking next, reading nothing, and then answering 3 questions and getting their certificate was more their idea of learning. So it's quite funny. The incessant ringing of fire alarms is one that actually made us break down and laughing, because in a course that takes about 20 minutes, we have one slide where we give them a bit of audio to indicate what the fire alarm sounds like, and that's about 2 seconds long. So the incessant ringing. So yeah, we get some feedback, but we get also some very mind-boggling feedback. It also teaches us how learners experience things in a completely different way, because for every course we can say we get a feedback in the positive points where it said it was just enough information, great, and then in the negative feedback someone else will say like it was too information, another person will say it was way too much information. So you do learn that there's no pleasing everybody, but we tend to just look at the 80-20% rule, and overall we feel like we're doing really well. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Miriam because I don't know anything about this.
Okay, you do know some things about this. So one of the things is we've been talking a lot about how at the course level we've tried to improve our user experience. And for one of these specific areas, we've tried to improve our user experience from the category level down, because we have these nursing medication tests, which are just a bunch of quizzes. And currently there are 44 separate courses in the nursing medication test area. And it's you can see from my little diagram down there, which has a crossed out list of courses. There's actually 2 pages like that, and it seems a little bit mean to expect people to look through a list of courses like that to try and find their area, when we could provide them with a easily navigatable, that's probably not even a word, sort of menu structure to get there instead. So this is actually the category view for those nursing medication tests. And in the category, we've just edited the category so that I've put some, they're not even images, it's a table with cells coloured and links in the over the text. So so it can be changed on the fly without having to remake images and things like that. And basically each of those links is going to a page, which is in an orphan section of a course. The course itself has that same structure duplicated in it, so that if people end up going back to the course using the navigation instead of back to the category, they see the same menu. And so within those pages is then a much more friendly list of the different service-specific areas under adults or pediatrics or mental health. So we've just tried to make it a bit friendlier for people to get to their areas, because this is something that they're doing where they're already quite stressed. They're being invigilated. They have someone looking over their shoulder, and we don't want to have them scroll around and all that sort of stuff. Next slide, please. And we've done the same thing for the competency assessments, which is a similar sort of structure where there's a whole bunch of areas, there's some very service-specific stuff going on, and there's just a lot of courses hidden behind there. So making it as easy as possible for people to get to their area, someone's sharing a Moodle theme. Keep in mind we're using Tortora, not Moodle. And it's not our Tortora. We're not the main hosts. So we're actually sub-hosting off someone else. Next screen. And then within the actual course itself, so this is the nursing medication test course, we've tried to emulate the structure, the same structure that they see in other courses as much as possible, even though it doesn't go through a course feedback certificate saying there's 3 tests they've got to pass and all that sort of stuff. But we also use the course completion status block, which we don't tend to use too much in the other courses. It's there in every other course, but there's only ever one thing that's being tracked in every other course that we've got, and that's the certificate, because that's the thing that people need to make sure they've gotten for their learning to be recorded. Whereas in these, we're tracking test 1, test 2, test 3, and the certificate, because people come back to these at various times. We're sticking to core modules as much as possible. Checklist is a third-party module, and again, we're running Totara, not Moodle, and we don't have the ability to necessarily just request a whole bunch of third-party modules be added. So the conditional activities and the course completion status block is there. It's core. It works really well. And at present, we don't feel the need to add a module that does almost the same thing. And then if you go to the next slide, you can't. Can someone please go? Miranda's dropped out. Someone with authority. Stephen, looks like Stephen has got the presenter role. Shane has got the presenter role. The presenter role is being passed around like a hot potato. One of the things we've done is these competency assessments are being done along with someone else. So it's not the user who does it. The user signs in, and then the assessor actually takes the device off them. It's usually a tablet of some sort, and does the competency assessment. And we wanted to make it as painless as possible for the assessor to do this, make it as obvious. So we actually used the closed question type for this particular assessment because it emulated as much as possible the paper form that they already had. And it was so simple because all it needed was a met, not met for every question. And it needed to be presented in such a way that they could have a whole bunch of things grouped together like this, which you can't do so easily when you have to put each of those lines as a separate question. And this question type allowed us to improve the user experience by putting a whole bunch of questions into the same question effectively, and by using a nice table and just using the closed question type, which is great. I like that question type. I just wish it was easier to use. That it had a bit more of a what you see is what you get editor to it, like Hot Potatoes does. So, you know, I'm still waiting for that, which hopefully sometime. The other benefit of doing this and digitalizing this was that previously, when they were doing it on paper, there was someone who had to do the data entry and put it all into the computer and put all the grades in and all the met, not met for every single person. It's now automatically on the computer, and people can immediately go in, the users can go in and see how they did by reviewing their previous attempt at this quiz. And the reports are easily downloadable and able to be exported into useful formats such as Excel, which minimizes the amount of data entry. It also minimizes the amount of error that people have in the data entry, because it's really easy to accidentally do the wrong thing. And I think that's the end of me, so I'll mute myself again and hand back over to Miranda.
Yeah, and I got back in just in time. So I might add to what Miriam was saying and replying, you know, just reacting to some questions on the side, is that we are also trying to do so much within this Totara we've got to get things a bit more streamlined in general in the hospital, because and people who work in like medical environments will know that there's like thousands of softwares that get run in this hospital with bits and pieces everywhere, and we've slowly built ourselves up a reputation of being able to do a lot of things on our platform, so that there are some things that actually belong together that used to be in other softwares where we are trying to take over, so it becomes a one-stop shop experience for people to know that their assessments, so the competency assessments are actually at the bedside, so people are standing there with a tablet using this. The official quizzes, the courses, resources that are now on a different intranet, that they're slowly all coming to this Totra space, and it becomes one learner experience hub. So that's kind of part of that whole setup we've got as well, to pull everything that's learner experience, that learner experience is about, is that you expect things to be somewhere. No, so just answering your question, Guido. No, they don't need an app for Articulate. It runs either in Flash on the browser or HTML5. So if they, and we've recently adapted it, or are going to adapt it for iPad as well, and so that will run HTML5 as well. So using a mobile, to be honest, is not one of our priorities at the moment, because let's say that 9% of our users do their online learning at work at their desktop. So it might be, it's something to think about.
We're needing to look at very soon, because there is a mobile strategy coming out that is going to be iPads, and so we have come up with a solution where it's really hard to talk really time. We have come up with a solution where the storyline packages that we can make them. We can change a certain setting that will make them run on mobile devices, including iPads, without needing to use the Articulate Storyline Player. So, because one of the things that we discovered with the Articulate Storyline Player is that if you host your SCORM behind in an LMS that requires someone to log in order to access the SCORM, then the Articulate Storyline Player can't access the SCORM package, because it's behind a login. So we did need to find a solution, and we did find a solution for being able to give access to our users on iPads and other mobile devices.
Okay, and we'll kind of finish up before the questions to show that we're not finished yet. Obviously, it's an ongoing process. One of the big issues we've got is that most of our compliance courses, so we've got about 5 compliance courses that people need to do yearly, and that is a big problem, because we have to refresh our courses every year so people can get new certificates with new dates on it, and it's a bit of a nightmare. So we are looking at solving that problem by introducing badges. So, for example, I have the Infection Control 2016 badge, and that expires, and now I have to get my Infection Control 2017 badges. So that's one thing we're looking at. So archive the course, yes. It uses up a lot of data as well for us, as we're paying for data, because for some strange reason, and we haven't really found that out yet why, if someone can help us, great, our courses accumulate an enormous amount of data over time, and just by people doing the courses. So our compliance courses will have 4,000 people, or at least, going in. And it becomes enormous, and we have to keep them at this point, because people sometimes ask for their certificate of last year, so we have to be able to generate that. So yeah, we're looking for a solution. So a solution would be probably maybe badges, because we've got some strange sentences there. We could use the programs and the learning paths in Totra, but our organizational structure, so that's what's supposed to be after organ, our organizational structure in our payroll system is not sound. So we cannot use it, we cannot transfer it, and so we're waiting for that to use actually a great solution in Totra. One of the other things is one-step password reset, because that is another problem we still have, where people get an email where they then click on another link and they get this weird generated passwords, and our users can be quite tricky in handling that. Let's call it that. We still do a manual password reset to something generic just to help people out, because they either do not get the email or they try to type instead of copy and paste and then do it completely wrong. So we have a lot of issues with that. So it would be great if they could just click on forgotten password and the whole thing would, be a one-step implementation. So it's something we're looking at. And then the ... means, looking at a lot of other things that can make that learner experience better. We're not making it easy on ourselves, so we've now solved about everything that we could solve in Storyline, but we're looking at other softwares now, so we might have to start over again to get these working streamlined. Yeah, so that's us. And any questions? So just going back to that chat question before, iSpring has not the ability to do what Miriam to do in Storyline. Let's say we've got very complicated gamified modules that can definitely not be created in something like iSpring. We're even at a point where our requirements are pushing us out of Storyline. So it's becoming too complicated to do all we want to do as interactivities. For people to keep track of all kinds of options, free navigations are becoming so difficult that game development software now to use. And as we say, then a new journey starts to make that work nicely in Moodle. Any other questions?
And I'm here talking through Miranda's microphone because it's easier than using mine.
Yes, Stefan. So the software is easier, even though Storyline on a basic level has a very low learning curve. It's a great software, but especially if you've got a bit of a programming background, it can be... No, there's no interaction between participants at this point. Because we are mostly looking at the like scenario-based, skill-based, personal. We do have courses that are courses fit into a blended program. So, for example, the acute care training module was specifically designed for participants to go through a number of the essentials and the theory before they go to a day in our simulation lab where they get to save mannequins from dying. And so it saves our nurses, our training nurses, a lot of time that people have already gone through a quite focused e-learning module with interactive scenarios to be able to start quicker with the real work instead of having to iterate theory. So it fits into blended programs, but we do not have any interaction for people yet. It is also something we are looking at. We do have a number of forums running, but not really within courses. They are more communities of practice. Anything else? We've done this nicely, 50 minutes. It's very well timed.
Considering our technical difficulties.
Hey Miriam and Miranda, Shane here. Just thought I'd quickly jump in right now and just say on behalf of the iMoot team, thank you very much for giving up your time and for a great presentation. But if there's any more questions, please, people feel free to ask.
Okay, I'm mentioning that on the presentation course page, we will share our presentation, and we also also a goodbye HTML file for those of you who are using Storyline and to steal it, because it's nothing secret. It's in all your SCORM packages. We just adapted it, and it gives you a example of how to use it.
And I don't know, it might work in other SCORM packages as well.
Yeah. For the Moodle people out there, we are still having some issues with presenting a SCORM in the SCORM window nicely. There's quite a space on the sides that we would like to see disappear. Thank you, Stefan. You have evidence. We are generally called that at work as well.